March 14th, 1997, the town of St. Duvet lay cloaked in a thin mist, the cobblestone streets reflecting the dim glow of street lights as if the night itself were holding its breath. Adrian Kepler, 35, a skilled boilist known for his meticulous work in the local workshop, had spent the day repairing industrial boilers, his hands roughened from hours of welding and bending metal. Across town, his wife Emma, 33, prepared for the evening with quiet anticipation, her movements precise, each stroke of makeup and careful adjustment of her dark coat revealing traces of the bar dancer she once was. Though married for several years, Emma still carried the pulse of nightlife within her, a lingering spark from days spent performing at the Silver Lantern, a bar known for its thumping music, flickering neon, and patrons who thrived on drama and fleeting passions. That evening, as Adrian finished his work and returned home, the couple shared a brief dinner, exchanging smiles that masked unspoken tensions. Adrian, wary of old acquaintances from Emma's past, and Emma, nostalgic yet cautious, balancing curiosity with loyalty to the life she now led. By 10:30 p.m., they lived together in their black Honda Civic, driving through narrow streets where the fog hung low, the hum of the engine mingling with the faint rustle of trees and distant sounds of nightlife fading behind them. Their destination was ambiguous. Emma spoke of visiting a friend briefly, while Adrian merely nodded, trusting yet uneasy, his eyes scanning the road ahead as though sensing unseen eyes watching. They passed familiar landmarks, the old bakery with its shuttered windows, the park where children once played, now silent except for the whisper of wind, each step of the journey marked by a tension that neither addressed aloud. The road led them toward the outskirts, meeting roads that curved past abandoned warehouses and small hills where the moonlight barely penetrated. Emma's thoughts drifted to the bar where she had once danced, a place that had shaped her youth, where she had known admiration, fleeting romances, and moments of reckless freedom. She glanced briefly at Adrian, whose jaw tightened at the mention of old friends, then focused on the road, his knuckles whitening on the steering wheel. Around 11:45 p.m., they reached the junction leading to the Ravine, a narrow canyon steep in local legend, avoided by most townsfolk for its treacherous cliffs and dense underbrush. Witnesses would later report faint headlights and the soft hum of an engine fading into darkness, though in the fog it was impossible to verify, leaving only fragments of a night that would become their last. When they failed to return home by midnight, neighbors grew uneasy, first calling friends and family, then alerting local authorities. Their apartment was undisturbed, meals half prepared, phones untouched, hinting at sudden disappearance rather than planned absence. In the following hours, the town buzzed with concern, whispers of possible accidents or foul play circulating, while police began interviews, focusing on Emma's past connections at the bar, Adrian's professional relationships, and the couple's habitual routines. Despite efforts, no immediate clues surfaced, and by morning, the Keplers were officially reported missing. The disappearance of Adrian and Emma Kepler cast a shadow over St. Duvet, a quiet town suddenly consumed by rumors, suspicion, and whispered theories, where every familiar face was questioned and every routine scrutinized. In the early days, police combed the usual haunts, Emma's old bar, the Silver Lantern, where faded posters of past performances still clung to walls, and Adrian's workshop, cluttered with tools and blueprints that revealed nothing but diligence and structure. Friends and relatives recounted the last time they saw the couple, their stories contradictory yet tinged with worry. Emma had been known to return to her old haunts, revisiting the bar to meet acquaintances and occasionally an ex-lover named Darren, a figure from a past life who had not entirely faded from her social orbit. Darren's presence, subtle yet unsettling, became a focal point for investigators who quietly probed his movements, interrogated his associates, and traced phone records, only to uncover small inconsistencies and shadows of an alibi that left more questions than answers. Meanwhile, Adrian's family, particularly his younger sister Marlene, grew restless, frustrated at the slow pace of the investigation and the insinuations directed toward Emma's past, which they insisted bore no relevance to his disappearance. Months turned into years, the town settling into a tense rhythm of hope and despair. Tips came in, some credible, some wild, each carefully logged by police who began to notice faint traces, a discarded scarf along a wooded path, partial tire tracks leading toward the Ravine, fragments of a vehicle's license plate noted by a passing jogger. In 2003, 6 years after the night the couple vanished, a shocking discovery changed the course of the case. The black Honda Civic was found half buried in a narrow ravine, its windows fogged, doors locked, and interior showing signs of sudden abandonment, though no bodies were present. Investigators noted several clues: fingerprints that matched neither Adrian nor Emma, faint traces of blood on the driver's seat, and a partially torn photograph depicting Emma alongside a man unidentified at the time, her expression tense and anxious, as if captured in the throes of a secret she could not share. Police theorized that foul play was inevitable, suspecting both the ex-lover Darren and perhaps someone closer, a hidden hand waiting patiently to manipulate events, someone who knew the couple's habits and their nightly routines. Marlene, driven by grief and anger, became vocal, accusing outsiders she believed had motives to harm her brother, yet in doing so, she inadvertently cast suspicion on men who were innocent, creating a cascade of accusations and wrongful detentions. The investigation grew increasingly complex as forensics interviews and anonymous tips painted a fragmented picture, revealing a network of relationships, jealousy, and long-standing grudges. Among these shadows, Emma's past resurfaced in subtle ways. Former colleagues recalled her late-night visits to the bar and her interactions with patrons whose loyalty had shifted over the years, each memory offering a piece of a puzzle that refused to form a coherent image. Adrian's routine, his predictable patterns after work, now appear almost tragically vulnerable, a life disciplined yet exposed to the unpredictability of human malice. As detectives pored over evidence, revisiting the Honda Civic, they uncovered tiny details overlooked in initial searches: a cigarette butt matching a DNA profile, smudges on the dashboard, and a faint tire mark suggesting the vehicle had been dragged before being abandoned in the ravine, pointing to deliberate concealment rather than accident. The tension in the town heightened as media coverage intensified. Families lived with the gnawing uncertainty of whether the couple was alive or had met a violent end, and police, grappling with years of conflicting testimonies, faced mounting pressure to untangle a case where every clue seemed to open new questions, weaving a narrative of love, betrayal, jealousy, and misdirected accusations that would ultimately converge in ways no one could yet predict, leaving Saint Duvet suspended between despair and the faint glimmer of eventual revelation. The discovery of Adrian and Emma's car in the Orland Ravine ignited a storm of speculation and tension, drawing law enforcement, forensic experts, and journalists into a web of intrigue that thickened with every passing day, where whispers of betrayal and hidden grudges intertwined with facts, creating a fog of suspicion that enveloped the small town of St. Duvet. Forensic teams meticulously examined the vehicle, uncovering traces of DNA that point to individuals long connected to Emma's past, while tire marks and scuff patterns indicated the car had been maneuvered deliberately, possibly to stage the scene or hide evidence of a confrontation. Emma's ex-lover Darren emerged as a prime suspect once again, his intimate presence in town and sporadic communications with mutual acquaintances suggesting more than mere coincidence, yet investigators found his alibi fragile but plausible, leaving them with frustration and ambiguity. Meanwhile, attention turned inward as Adrian's own family came under scrutiny, with Marlene, his sister, becoming a controversial figure in the investigation due to her repeated statements and accusations, which, though fueled by grief, steered suspicion toward innocent men who had no connection to the crime, one of whom, a local tradesman named Leonard, would spend 2 years behind bars as a result of misplaced blame, only to be exonerated later when the true sequence of events emerged. The threads of Emma's life before marriage, her nights as a bar dancer, her network of acquaintances, and the occasional return to old haunts intersected with Adrian's steady, predictable existence, creating a complex tapestry of relationships that investigators struggled to decode. Casual observers speculated that jealousy, long-standing resentment, and unresolved affairs might have escalated into violence, while experts noted the pattern of revisiting old social spaces as a possible trigger for confrontation. In parallel, police conducted exhaustive interviews with neighbors, co-workers, and bar patrons, assembling timelines that painted fragmented portraits of Emma's last known movements, including late-night visits to the Silver Lantern, where she was seen speaking with figures both familiar and shadowed by ambiguity. While Adrian's post-work routine suggested he had no reason to suspect imminent danger, making the abrupt disappearance all the more chilling. As evidence mounted, a pattern of collaboration between multiple parties began to emerge, subtle indications that the man's sister and Emma's ex may have acted together, motivated by a mixture of personal vendetta and opportunistic malice. Though proving this in a court of law remained challenging due to conflicting accounts and the passage of years eroding memories and physical proof. Investigators uncovered correspondence between Emma and Darren, revealing coded references in meetings that hinted at tension but not necessarily criminal intent, while the examination of Adrian's personal notes and diaries revealed a man both devoted and vigilant, yet powerless against the forces gathering around him, including those closest to his family. In 2010, after years of painstaking investigation, a breakthrough arrived when forensic retesting and a fresh interrogation exposed the involvement of previously overlooked individuals, confirming that the orchestrated disappearance had not been random but the result of premeditated planning by Emma's former partner and Adrian's sister, whose motives intertwined personal jealousy, old grudges, and financial considerations, and whose actions had tragically ensnared innocent parties along the way, culminating in Leonard's wrongful imprisonment. The revelation stunned the community. What began as a case of missing persons evolved into a portrait of betrayal so intimate it shocked even seasoned detectives, as the complicity of family members and former lovers underscored the unpredictability of human behavior when ambition, envy, and obsession collided. Media coverage intensified, broadcasting interviews with relatives and friends, dissecting timelines, and highlighting the psychological complexity of those involved, while public sentiment shifted from grief to outrage, demanding justice and accountability for a crime that had been meticulously hidden behind layers of misdirection and secrecy. The meticulous reconstruction of events revealed how small decisions, a late-night visit, a clandestine meeting, a whispered argument, had set off a chain reaction culminating in murder, the abandonment of the couple's car, and the years of uncertainty that haunted Saint Duvet, leaving survivors, witnesses, and authorities grappling with the unsettling realization that the people one trusts most may also be capable of the greatest betrayal. By the end of this act, the stage was set for the eventual confrontation of truth and consequence, as the threads of deception unraveled slowly but inexorably, exposing the dark network that had orchestrated Adrian and Emma's disappearance, revealing a story of passion, vengeance, and injustice that had festered in the shadows for more than a decade, leaving a community haunted by both what had happened and the staggering scope of lies and manipulation that had allowed it to persist undetected for so many years. After the forensic breakthroughs in 2010, the investigation into Adrian and Emma's disappearance took a darker and more complex turn than anyone could have anticipated, revealing layers of manipulation, collusion, and betrayal that stretched far beyond initial suspicions. With the car recovered from Ravine, investigators meticulously combed through every corner, uncovering traces of blood, fingerprints, and fibers that slowly reconstructed the fateful night. But what the evidence revealed pointed not to a single perpetrator, but to a carefully orchestrated plan executed by multiple individuals with intimate knowledge of the couple's routines. Adrian's sister, Marlene, became a central figure in this web of intrigue. Her grief had long been misinterpreted as confusion, but detectives began to uncover a pattern of calculated misdirection, from the timing of her statements to the way she pointed suspicion toward innocent parties, including Leonard, whose wrongful imprisonment had cast a long shadow over the investigation. Emma's ex-lover, Darren, also emerged as more than a mere suspect, his intimate presence in the couple's social circles and history of unresolved conflict with Emma providing motive, yet his involvement appeared intertwined with Marlene's in ways that suggest premeditation rather than a crime of passion. Investigators reconstructed the couple's final days through interviews, financial records, and security footage from surrounding establishments, revealing a tension-filled pattern: late-night excursions, secretive meetings, and clandestine communications that, while not inherently incriminating, painted a portrait of a couple unknowingly ensnared in someone else's vendetta. Surveillance showed Emma entering the Silver Lantern on multiple occasions, speaking in hushed tones with familiar figures, yet she left no evidence of wrongdoing herself. It became clear that the danger lay not in her actions but in the intentions of those who had once claimed to care for her. Meanwhile, Adrian, returning from work each evening, remained unaware of the invisible threat that stalked him and his wife, his routines predictable, which may have made him an easier target for those plotting against him. The investigation revealed that the night of the disappearance had been meticulously planned. The placement of the vehicle in the ravine suggested familiarity with the terrain, timing designed to evade witnesses, and a coordinated effort to eliminate physical traces, including the careful cleaning of the crime scene to remove any incriminating material. Forensic analysis indicated that the perpetrators had used gloves, avoided leaving shoe prints, and manipulated the environment to suggest an accident, yet subtle inconsistencies in their staging ultimately betrayed their intent. In parallel, detectives began untangling the web of false accusations that had clouded the case for years, reviewing statements made by Marlene and comparing them to timelines reconstructed from witness accounts. It became evident that Lynette's imprisonment had been a tragic consequence of manipulation, as Marlene's desire to deflect blame had led to the incarceration of a man who had no connection to the crime. When confronted with new evidence, Marlene's composure began to crack, revealing glimpses of guilt that law enforcement meticulously documented, while Darren's alibis were dissected, revealing contradictions and omissions that, though subtle, created openings for prosecution. The social context of Emma's past also proved significant. Her former life as a bar dancer and the unresolved tension with past relationships provided both motive and opportunity for the perpetrators, highlighting how personal histories can be weaponized by those with malicious intent. Investigators also discovered a network of communications and meetings that suggested Marlene and Darren had coordinated their actions, leveraging knowledge of the couple's habits to manipulate circumstances, with Marlene using her position within Adrian's family to facilitate access and Darren exploiting his lingering influence over Emma to ensure her compliance or distraction. Evidence recovered from the ravine, including fragments of personal items, clothing fibers, and partial fingerprints, enabled experts to reconstruct the final confrontation. A violent altercation, followed by the deliberate removal of the couple from public view, staged to appear as a tragic accident rather than a premeditated crime. Public attention intensified as journalists reported on the unfolding investigation, highlighting the tragic irony of a family member and a former lover conspiring to commit a crime that had remained hidden for over a decade. While the community grappled with the shock that those closest to the victims could be responsible for orchestrating such a calculated act of violence. Throughout this period, law enforcement also faced internal and external scrutiny. Missteps in the early years, particularly Lynette's wrongful imprisonment, fueled criticism and cast a shadow over the investigative process, yet the persistence of detectives and forensic advancements eventually led to breakthroughs that clarified the events of that night. Psychological profiling played a key role in understanding the motivations behind the crime, revealing Marlene's blend of envy, possessiveness, and opportunism, paired with Darren's fixation on unresolved emotions and desire for control, creating a synergy of motives that magnified the danger to Adrian and Emma. The investigation's revelations painted a portrait of a meticulously orchestrated disappearance, where every step had been calculated. The timing of visits, the coordination of participants, the staging of evidence, and the manipulation of public perception all worked together to conceal the perpetrator's involvement for years. In the aftermath, authorities sought to correct the injustices caused by earlier misdirections, including exonerating Lynette and providing closure for families who had endured uncertainty for more than a decade. As details emerged, the story of Adrian and Emma became not only a cautionary tale about trust, betrayal, and the destructive potential of unresolved grudges, but also a testament to the persistence of law enforcement in unraveling the complex threads of human behavior, deception, and premeditation that can transform seemingly ordinary lives into tragic chronicles of manipulation and loss. By the end of this act, the investigation had reached a critical point. The true perpetrators were identified, the motives fully understood, and the evidence sufficient to bring charges, yet the emotional weight of betrayal, the tragedy of lost years, and the lingering trauma for families and innocent victims underscored that even when justice is served, the consequences of such a crime ripple far beyond the courtroom, leaving scars that endure long after the facts have been established.
The courtroom was tense, every seat filled with journalists, family members, and curious onlookers who had followed the case for years, their faces a mix of anticipation and disbelief, as the saga of Adrian and Emma's disappearance reached its dramatic conclusion. Marlene, Adrian's sister, appeared composed at first, her eyes betraying only the slightest flicker of unease as she sat beside her defense attorney, while Darren maintained an aura of defiance, insisting on the strength of his alibi even as the mounting evidence painted a picture far more damning than he could reconcile. The prosecution laid out the intricate web of planning and deception that had culminated in the couple's tragic deaths, starting with the meticulous tracking of their routines, the manipulation of late-night excursions, and the careful orchestration of meetings that ensured Adrian and Emma were in precisely the wrong place at precisely the wrong time. Every piece of forensic evidence was methodically presented: blood traces on fragments of the car interior, fibers that linked Marlene's clothing to the vehicle, partial fingerprints indicating deliberate contact with surfaces to stage the scene, and the recovered personal items that confirmed the violent struggle had taken place before the car was pushed into Orlane Ravine. Witnesses were called, including neighbors who had noticed suspicious activity near the couple's residence in the months preceding their disappearance, former friends of Darren who recounted his lingering obsession with Emma, and colleagues of Marlene who testified to her increasingly erratic behavior, her envy of Emma's life, and the subtle ways she had diverted suspicion away from herself for years. One particularly chilling moment came when a retired police officer testified about Leonard's wrongful imprisonment, recounting the frustration and shame of having been forced to prosecute an innocent man due to misleading statements and deliberate misdirection. The courtroom was silent as the prosecution detailed how Marlene had deliberately fed false leads, exploited family connections, and manipulated Darren into participating in a plan that escalated from intimidation and threats to a violent, premeditated murder, all while maintaining the illusion of innocence. Darren's defense attempted to cast doubt on the evidence, claiming inconsistencies in timelines and arguing that Marlene's involvement had been exaggerated. But the prosecution countered with irrefutable forensic data, including DNA analysis, digital footprints, and communication records, showing a clear pattern of collusion and intent. Graphic reconstructions were presented, illustrating the couple's last hours and the final confrontation in the ravine, highlighting how Adrian and Emma's predictable routines had been exploited to lure them into a trap. Emotionally charged testimony came from Emma's surviving family members, recounting her vibrant personality, her hopes and fears, and the devastating impact of her disappearance on those who loved her. Adrian's friends spoke of his unwavering dedication to his work as a boyalist, his devotion to his wife, and the shock of realizing that someone from within the family he trusted could orchestrate such a heinous act. As the trial progressed, Marlene's composure began to crumble. Under cross-examination, she faltered when confronted with irrefutable evidence linking her to the crime scene and to key communications with Barron. Her initial silence gave way to fragmented admissions, revealing the depth of planning, the motives rooted in envy and resentment, and the calculated steps taken to eliminate Adrian and Emma from the picture. Darren, faced with the mounting testimony, eventually broke down, acknowledging his involvement but attempting to minimize his role, claiming he had acted under Marlene's influence. Yet the consistency of forensic evidence, witness statements, and digital records left little room for mitigation. The jury listened intently, the weight of the decade-long mystery pressing down on them as the narrative of betrayal, premeditation, and murder unfolded with an almost cinematic intensity. The prosecution emphasized that the crime had not only ended 2 lives, but had inflicted years of suffering on families, friends, and an innocent man who had been jailed unjustly, highlighting the ripple effect of malice and deception. Expert witnesses on criminal psychology provided insight into the mindset of the perpetrators, explaining how Marlene's envy, desire for control, and opportunistic tendencies combined with Darren's lingering obsession to create a lethal synergy of motives, demonstrating that this was not a spontaneous act, but the culmination of careful, calculated planning. Throughout the proceedings, the media coverage amplified public outrage, bringing renewed attention to systemic flaws in the early investigation, the dangers of wrongful accusations, and the chilling reality that those closest to victims could sometimes harbor the darkest intentions. In closing arguments, the prosecution painted a haunting picture: 2 lives extinguished, trust betrayed, innocence tarnished, and a community left grappling with the unimaginable consequences of greed, jealousy, and vindictiveness. The jury deliberated for several days, weighing every piece of evidence, every witness statement, and every detail of forensic reconstruction, and when they finally returned, the courtroom held its collective breath. Marlene was found guilty on multiple counts, including premeditated murder, conspiracy, and obstruction of justice, her sentence reflecting the severity and calculated nature of her crimes. Darren was similarly convicted, his role in the conspiracy acknowledged, but considered in light of Marlene's manipulations, resulting in a substantial sentence that underscored the court's recognition of both culpability and orchestration. Leonard was formally exonerated, his name cleared after 3 years of wrongful imprisonment, a solemn reminder of the human cost of deception and the importance of meticulous, evidence-based investigation. In the aftermath, the families of Adrian and Emma struggled to reconcile the relief of justice with the enduring pain of loss. Memorials were held, legacies recounted, and communities came together to honor the lives cut tragically short. The case became a touchstone for law enforcement and legal professionals, emphasizing the necessity of careful investigation, skepticism toward misleading testimony, and vigilance against manipulation within families and social networks. Media retrospectives recounted the story as a chilling example of premeditated violence entwined with personal vendettas, exploring how envy, unresolved grudges, and calculated malice can culminate in tragedy, while highlighting the perseverance of detectives who refuse to let the truth remain buried. Forensic breakthroughs, meticulous record-keeping, and relentless pursuit of justice ultimately unraveled a complex narrative that had confounded authorities for over a decade, demonstrating that even the most elaborate attempts at deception can be exposed through diligence, science, and unwavering commitment to truth. By the end of Act 5, closure had been achieved in the legal sense, yet the emotional scars lingered. The story of Adrian and Emma served as both a cautionary tale and a testament to human resilience, reminding the world that justice, though delayed, can prevail, and that the bonds of trust, when broken, can have consequences that echo far beyond the immediate victims. Families, friends, and communities would carry the lessons learned from this tragedy, ensuring that the lives of Adrian and Emma would not be forgotten. Their story preserved as a haunting but instructive narrative about betrayal, manipulation, and the relentless pursuit of truth. The courtroom emptied slowly, leaving behind the weight of truth and the quiet realization that even the darkest chapters of human behavior, when exposed, offer a chance for justice, understanding, and reflection.